Welcome to the C.S. Joseph podcast, Office Edition, because why not be in the office while simultaneously cooking bratwurst on the side? Hopefully, you folks can hear it in the background, because if you can't, well, you might want to get your ears checked. I am a huge fan of bratwurst, especially like when I'm eating keto. It's actually one of my primary food staples because of the super mega high amount of fat. Kind of like, extroverted thinking and FI users, being on cognitive axis with each other, as well as TIFE users also being in a relationship because, like, they're supposed to be. So, this today's question from an Acolyte member is: how can extroverted thinking plus FI users, which are TEFI users, be in relationships with FETI users? And I'm kind of curious as to why this question actually ended up in the queue to be asked by the acolytes this time around, because I have heavily explained compatibility. I believe I talk about it in season 5, and then I also talk about it, I think maybe season 23 or season 26, maybe it's season 26, where I talk about cognitive asynchronicity, which is the opposite of cognitive synchronicity. So before you guys watch this video, I really, really like to direct you to the season 5 playlist known as Cognitive Synchronicity here on the YouTube channel and also on the podcast, although I think the podcast is not really organized by season very well. Hopefully I'm wrong, though, and you can leave a comment below here to inform me of me being wrong or right. Hopefully I am wrong, because as much as I enjoy being right, I kind of actually enjoy being wrong more. So that being said, these people are supposed to be in a relationship because this is the basis of what we call emotional compatibility. Judgment functions, which are extroverted thinking and introverted feeling, which are together in a cognitive axis, and then also extroverted feeling, introverted thinking, which are also together in a cognitive axis. Extroverted feeling is about how other people feel. Introverted thinking is all about what I think, also known as logic. It is if this, then that thinking. It's also deductive reasoning. Whereas extroverted thinking is inductive reasoning. It's all about looking at all of the available data and making decisions from a majority rules or weighing it out in your head, which is an FI, introverted feeling judgment. And this leads to a connection of emotional compatibility. Why? Well, because extroverted feeling is trying to basically consume introverted feeling, because extroverted feeling wants so desperately to feel accepted. Ooh, yay, accepted, and the FI users provide the acceptance. And then extroverted thinkers are like trying so hard to gain knowledge so that they can feel smart. So they want to be around introverted thinkers who process data quickly from the input the extroverted thinkers provide. And then the extroverted thinkers, like thought vampires, latch on to the TI users in their lives, the introverted thinkers, and then absorb or consume those thoughts, and then they collect them within themselves, essentially, and either put them into practice through extroverted sensing or actually store them up internally with introverted sensing. And then as a result of that, those people are, well, guess what? Smarter. Problem is with extroverted thinkers, they are only as intelligent as they are around however many introverted thinkers in their life, and that can be very frustrating for many of them. Especially, like, for example, if the TI users are making a bunch of assumptions and relying on false premise, well, then those TI users would be basically dumb, also known as ignorant, which would also cause the extroverted thinker around those TI users who are not very sharp to become not very sharp themselves. They need to be around sharp TI users so that they can be sharp. I already explored this heavily in the recent video that we did about what is it called? Does TI actually mean intelligence? I think that was the episode name. And honestly, the answer is no. It doesn't necessarily mean intelligence. You got to have a sharp TI user around, which requires really good input. But if the input is low grade, then the TI user is going to be low grade. So sometimes those TI users, often because they're not around very good extroverted thinkers, they need to go basically research themselves, read a bunch of books, and utilize books as replacements for extroverted thinkers in their lives, which is what I've had to do consistently. It's very difficult for people to keep up with how well read I am, because I average about 15 to 20 books a year right now. My goal is to get to 26 books a year, which is one book every 2 weeks, which is an extremely crazy goal, but it could be managed. But the amount of reading that I do, I mean, I wasn't always that way. I mean, I would read probably maybe 5 books a year, like 10 years ago. But even then, that I would still be way more well read than almost at least 90% of the people in my life. And let me be honest with you folks, it's lonely at the top. That's why I enjoy being wrong more than I enjoy being right. And it's also much more enjoyable to be around extroverted thinkers that actually have valuable knowledge and valuable input and a valuable opinion because they are either just as well read as I am or even more so, right? And it ends up becoming really awesome foundation for a great relationship. But again, folks, this is just emotional compatibility. And I am hoping that this question was not asked by this particular acolyte because they've been infested with socionics knowledge, or at least colloquial socionics, talking about duality relationships and how, hey, ISFJ is the absolute best type for an ENTP to be with, which is kind of interesting because I explained recently on the channel what colloquial duality looks like versus what the actual duality is. From the perspective of from the actual real perspective of socionics. But then again, I get people like Taylor Briggs messaging me in Facebook Messenger telling me I'm still wrong. So, like, okay, well, apparently the colloquial and the actual still is a very muddied, watered place. I'm just trying to do the best I can here. Regardless, there are still two different interpretations of socionics duality, right? And according to socionics, TE plus the colloquial version, at least what I'm claiming is the colloquial version, extroverted thinkers should be with extroverted thinkers. And like, no, that's high camaraderie. That's not compatibility. And especially when you look at male to male relationships and female to female relationships in terms of their friendships, basically non-sexual friendship with people of the same biological gender, basically. When this ends up happening, they end up improving each other. They end up learning from one another. But it's not a face-to-face relationship. You have to have, from an emotional compatibility perspective, in order to even have a face-to-face relationship, instead of a shoulder-to-shoulder relationship, the extroverted thinking needs to line up with another person's introverted thinking, and the extroverted feeling needs to line up with another person's introverted feeling. That way, within the context of a relationship, you have a feedback loop that goes like this: input, process, output, feedback. And this particular feedback loop is something that we have discussed heavily at length within season 18. Not only that, we're going to be releasing some new content coming out from the Theory Special Interest Group on the CSJ, or the Ego Hacker Discord, actually. So shout out to the Theory SIG for the great work they're doing. They made some really interesting strides with input, process, output, feedback, and the types. I did see it. It did actually come across my desk. I was very happy to see this small innovation. So shout out to the Theory SIG for coming up with that, and most particularly the individual who came up with the concept by themselves. And I forgot who it was, so forgive me for not having your name prepared for this video. But seriously, great job. It was awesome, and let's keep that up. So yeah. But the bottom line is that, having, the input. What is the input? That's extroverted thinking. What is the process? Well, the input is the data. The process is processing that data. That process is introverted thinking, also known as TI. So rationale ends up feeding logic, logic being introverted thinking, which then becomes an output, which is what is socially acceptable, what is acceptable. That is the extroverted feeling. And then that ends up generating feedback, which is like, okay, is an individual going to adopt that output? Is it going to become a principle? Is it going to become a standard? Basically, that is the introverted feeling approach. And every sexual relationship out there, or at least a relationship that is based on emotional compatibility, like oftentimes women prefer emotionally compatible relationships with everyone in their life, and then men prefer sexually compatible relationships with everyone in their life. And because these differences in biological genders, we end up having people value different things. And but regardless, is that within an emotionally compatible relationships, like for example a woman to woman friendship, or a woman to man relationship, emotional compatibility is required in order for it to become face to face to begin with. So anyway, that's basically how it works. That's why it works. So this is not like, don't believe the colloquial interpretation of socionics in terms of duality, in terms of like this is the best relationship. It's crap. Don't believe it. It's not real. just seriously get boned up on cognitive synchronicity, season 5 playlist, and then also cognitive asynchronicity, which I think is actually season 26 playlist here on the YouTube channel and on the podcast. Get educated with those so you actually understand the fundamentals here. So yeah, but cool. With that being said, folks, I'll see you guys in the next episode.